Hello, my people. All right, so we finished taking a test on Friday of last week. And I will tell you that quite a few of you were lacking in following the rubric that we used all last year. So one of the things that I want you to remember is that all of your answers need to be correct and complete. If they're only partially right, if you've not included all of the stuff, then you got points deducted. You also always have to have evidence, okay? 9 times out of 10, it will be textual evidence. Sometimes that other 10% you can use background knowledge, but you have to have that evidence to support it. Without the evidence, it just appears as if it is your opinion. So I need to know what your evidence is and where it came from. So enough about the test. Now, so we have a new end in mind for this week. Our end in mind is I will be able to identify the theme by looking for repeated ideas in the story. So one of the things with larger books of literature, Hatchet is considered a small piece, is that in larger pieces you can have multiple themes throughout a book. Well, Hatchet has actually more than one, but we're just going to focus on the one all through this week, okay? So we're going to really just focus on one. Now, so you're going to be identifying the theme by looking for repeated ideas, which means there's going to be every day's reading, there's going to be multiple ways that that one particular theme is identified. And we'll go talk about that a little bit more when we get over to the other side of the room. So our words for this week are receded, which means retreated. When I think about the word receded, I think about we live in areas that we have floods. It's not unusual for us to have floodwaters, high water. And we talk about how the water has receded off of, say, 229. That means that it's retreated back to the banks that it came from. We have crude, which is unrefined. So we can talk about crude in a couple ways. We could talk about when you made a birdhouse at Vacation Bible School and you nailed it together and it all wasn't joined up just right. You didn't sand it off really well and you could get little splinters. That is considered crude or unrefined. Now, there's another thing that, as a mom, that I think is crude or unrefined. And I do not like my kids having bad table manners. I don't like them belching at the table. I don't like them talking about gross stuff at the dinner table. As a mom, I find that crude or unrefined. So, crude has multiple meanings. But the way that we're going to be using it in our this week reading is as if you made that birdhouse, that whatever is being created doesn't have that polished, you bought it off of the Walmart shelf kind of thing. It's kind of rustic. Gorge is to eat greedily. Now, if you have been outside playing all day long, whether it's basketball, baseball, bikes, trampoline, just physically active all day long. You had breakfast, but you went out and you didn't come back in, I don't know, till like 6 o'clock. And all of a sudden you realize that you are famished. That's when you start to eat and you're just eating so fast. You're eating greedily. And your mom or your dad or your mama might say, slow down, you're going to make yourself sick. So you're eating or you're gorging yourself. And you're doing it just greedily to the point where you just kind of can't control yourself. Initial is first. Gesturing is signaling, which is what I do all the time. So gesturing is where you, for me, is I use my hands when I'm talking all the time. But when I think of how they're thinking about gesturing here, I think it probably has more of a purpose. So when we're in the classroom and I want you to be quiet, I just do this. That's our signal, right? And I just stand there, and within just a couple of seconds, everybody gets quiet, and I can put my hand down. Gesturing in this week's reading has a purpose. So if we're out on the playground and I start doing this, as you see me, you know exactly what I'm wanting you to do there. I don't have to like go, it's time to go in. I'm just doing this. Nicked is where you are cut slightly. Now, ladies and gentlemen, in another couple years, some of our ladies will start, this year or next year some of you might start shaving your legs. And when you get on that shin bone, some of y'all might cut yourself a little bit there because you don't realize how lightly to hold that razor. So a nicked is cut slightly. Men, when you start shaving that face, it's not unusual for you to kind of get some little nicks around your jawline where those bones are, or up here, because you are mashing the razor too hard. Same kind of scenario. Precious is treasured. So what is precious to one person, or what they treasure, is quite different from someone else. So if we were all in this classroom right now, I could have you list the thing that you find most precious in your life. And I've done this, so I kind of have an idea what the answer is going to be. So if there were 20 people in this classroom and I asked that question, about 14 of you would say your cell phone, or your game system, or your some type of four-wheeler or something like that. It's usually something of monetary value. Now, if you were to ask mothers what is their most precious thing, or what do they treasure or have treasured, most of us will say our kids. You know, there's days we'd like to just shake you, but for the most part, you are our most precious items. And so precious is treasured. Smeared is spread. Now, all of you have smeared something in your life, whether it's peanut butter or jelly, or when you're finger painting when you were in preschool and kindergarten, you spread stuff out everywhere. So these are words that we're going to be really looking at. These should be easy ones for you to do on Quizlet, so kind of keep that in mind. So our end in mind again is identifying themes by looking for repeated ideas in the story. Now we go for a little walk. Now, if you see this classroom, I've tried to straighten it up. It's been a hot mess. I've had stuff everywhere. And I'm just going to be honest, guys. I'm ready for you all to come back to school. But I need to let you all know that on the 28th, when you do come back, that I won't be here. My mother is going to have a pretty involved surgery. So I'm going to have to go and stay with her that first week. So we'll talk about that a little bit later, but I do want to give you a heads up about that, okay? Try to keep you involved. So that being said, we know that our end in mind is all about that theme and identifying theme by looking for those repeated ideas. So we have up here on the smart board a passage, and we're going to see if we can identify the theme. And then we also want to think about, how do we know? What was our evidence? Okay, so here we go. Let me kind of get it to where you can see it all. So at the top, I'm going to be right here. It says, Kara was the new girl at school. Most of the students made no effort to welcome her, but Tanya did. Tanya helped Kara find her class when she looked lost and told her that they could sit together at lunch. And Tanya and Kara got to know each other pretty well during the next few weeks as they talked about their shared interests during lunch. Kara was good at math, so she helped Tanya with her math homework. And Tanya returned the favor by helping Kara with her English homework. So, if we wanted to think about a theme here, what do you think the theme would be of this particular passage? Makes me want to do the Jeopardy music. Do, 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 do. What do you think the theme would be? And once you come up with the theme in your mind, what's your evidence to support it? Because like all good readers, you have to be able to support what you think. So take a minute. What do you think? It is friendship. Oh. Well, I'm going to have to orientate the board so it'll let me write on it. Give me a minute. Braxton Broughton, what is this you call this game? All right, let's try that again. All right, so friendship would be the theme. Now, when we talk about repeated ideas, the repeated ideas are your evidence. So, let's see what we can find. Tanya helped Kara find her classes. Okay. Tanya told her that they could sit together at lunch. They got to know each other over the next few weeks. They had shared interest. Let's go a little further. Kara was good in math, so we're going to say Kara helped Tanya with her math homework. And then it says Tanya returned the favor. Tanya was helping Kara with her English homework. So repeated ideas is nothing more than the evidence that supports this particular theme of friendship. So when we talk about the lengthy version of that, looking for repeated ideas in the story, we're looking for repeated pieces of evidence that will support what your theme is. Okay, what is the evidence that supports it? How do we know that's what took place? Now, let's think about Hatchet. And when we think about Hatchet, what do you think possible themes could be for Hatchet right now? If you don't mind, I'm kind of going to get us directly out of that light. So when we think about Hatchet as of right now, from all of the things that we did the last 2 weeks, what would a theme be? Some of y'all might say survival. And survival would be actually a good one. But some common themes you could have thought of would be survival, maturity, because he's had to grow up, right? Coming of age. But the one that sticks out to me is something called perseverance. Now, we want to open up that reading journal and we want to write the word perseverance. Now we get to go on another trip. So we have perseverance here. And I want you to think about, what in the world do you think that word means? Perseverance. Perseverance is not giving up. Okay, so I want you to write that beside that. Or you could have said persisting. So most words have more than one definition. This word is no exception to that. It has at least two. But what we're really going to be focusing on as far as perseverance is concerned is not giving up. And so we could easily flip that back to where Brian is in the plane and he is not going to give up and die. So he persevered by not giving up when he had to get the headset off the dead pilot. When he decided that he had to try to contact the tower, he was being persistent with he was not going to die. He had to learn how to fly that plane during all of that turmoil that was going on. So he was flying the plane. He was not giving up. He was showing perseverance. He had to come up with a plan to land the plane, and he was going over that plan over and over and over again in his mind. Perseverance, not giving up. He was not going to die without trying. All of those pieces of evidence or repeated ideas are showing us that he was showing perseverance. And that's what we're going to be looking at this week. Okay? Using perseverance. They're giving us the theme. Okay? So, identifying the theme. Our theme is perseverance. But you guys are going to have to figure out the repeated ideas or the evidence that supports it. Okay? So all week, perseverance is the theme. How are you supporting it? All right, let's pick our book up. We want to go to, gotta get my notes out here. Trying to make sure that my video is going to be matching what's on the computer this week. It's a little iffy for you all when it doesn't. All right, chapter 6, page 52. Are you there? I'll give you just a second more. All right, here we go. 2 years before, he and Terry had been fooling around down by the park, where the city seemed to end for a time and the trees grew thick and came down to the small river. They went through the park. It was thick there and seemed kind of wild. And they'd been joking and making things up, and they pretended that they were lost in the woods and talked in the afternoon about what they would do. Of course, they figured they'd have all sorts of goodies, like a gun and a knife and fishing gear and matches, so they could hunt and fish and have a fire. I wish you were here, Terry, he thought, with a gun and a knife and some matches. In the park that time, they decided the best shelter was a lean-to, and Brian set out now to make one up. Maybe cover it with grass or leaves or sticks, he thought, and he started to go down to the lake again, where there were some willows he could cut down for braces. But it struck him that he ought to find a good place for the lean-to, and so he had decided to look around first. I want to stop here, and they've talked about this word, lean-to. So what in the world is a lean-to that he's getting ready to make? Any ideas? Usually not. Some people do, but most people don't. All right, so let's do, trying to find a color that will show up. So we're gonna pretend that this is a wall, okay? That's like a wall. A lean-to is just like it sounds. It's like where you've got a slant and then you build a front. So it's leaning against this wall here. And that's serving as the support. So he's thinking that he needs to build a lean-to. And a lean-to is really a shelter. So he's got to figure out, how is he going to build a shelter? If he's going to be in the wilderness, he's probably needing that. All right. He wanted to stay near the lake because he thought the plane, even deep in the water, might show up to somebody flying over. And he didn't want it to diminish any chance he might have of being found. His eyes fell upon the stone ridge to his left, and he thought at first he should build a shelter against the stone. But before that, he decided to check out the far side of the ridge, and that was where he got lucky. Well, using the sun and the fact that it rose in the east and set in the west, he decided that the far side was the northern ridge side of the ridge. At one time in the far past, it had been scooped by something, probably a glacier. And this scooping had left a kind of sideways bowl back and under a ledge. It wasn't very deep, not a cave, but it was smooth and made a perfect roof. And he could almost stand in under the ledge. He had to hold his head slightly tipped forward at the front to keep it from hitting the top. And some of the rock that had been scooped out had also been pulverized by the glacial action, turned into sand. And now it made a small sand beach that went down to the edge of the water in front and to the right of the overhang. It was his first good luck. No, he thought, he had good luck in the landing, but this was good luck as well. Luck he needed. All he had to do was wall off part of the bowl and leave an opening as a doorway, and he would have a perfect shelter. Much stronger than a lean-to and dry because the overhang made a watertight roof. Well, he crawled back in under the ledge and sat. The sand was cool here in the shade, and the coolness felt wonderful. To his face, which was already starting to blister and get especially painful on his forehead, with the blisters on top of the swelling. He was also still weak. Just the walk around the back of that ridge and the slight climb over the top had left his legs rubbery. It felt good to sit for a bit under the shade of the overhang in the cool sand. And now, he thought, if I just had something to eat, anything. When he had rested a bit, he went down to the lake and drank a couple of swallows of water. He wasn't all that thirsty, but he thought the water might help to take the edge off his hunger. It didn't. Somehow, the cold lake water actually made it worse. It sharpened it. And he thought of dragging in wood to make a wall on part of the overhang, and picked up one piece to pull up, but his arms were too weak. And he knew then that it wasn't just the crash and injury to his body and head. It was also that he was weak from hunger. He would have to find something to eat before he did anything else. He would have to have something to eat. But what? So there are several reoccurring ideas or piece of evidence in this particular passage that is going with our perseverance theme. So let's think about it just a minute. So he tells himself that because there's no guarantee that he will get rescued, that he's thinking about that lean-to that he and Terry had said they would make when they were in the park. So that is one way that shows that he's thinking about, not giving up. He could have just sat down and went, oh my God, I'm never going down here. But he doesn't do that. He's thinking about, okay, what am I going to do? Gotta have a place to stay. So he thought about the lean-to, and he looked around and he thought, well, you know, I could just do one here. And he thinks, nah, I better scout around a little bit. And by scouting around a little bit, he actually finds a better place. It is almost like a cave, sort of. So it has an actual roof line, like a little slant that is the roof. So he doesn't have to worry about, okay, here's my wall, and now I got to build a roof and build a front. So now really all he's having to think about is how is he going to build that front? So he showed perseverance there by not giving up, by taking just the easy way. The last way that he's showing perseverance or not giving up, the evidence that shows that he's not giving up, is that he's decided that to keep going, I got to find food. And so he's thinking about, what am I going to do now? And we stop reading where he's like, well, I've got to figure that out, or I'm not going to be strong enough to do any of the other things. So he's thinking about keeping himself alive. And that's a huge piece. That's perseverance in its finest for this particular type of novel. He's not giving up. He's thinking about all the ways or the things that he needs to do to stay alive. Now, this is where our reading is stopping for today. So we're kind of gonna stop here. This has been about a 26 or 27 minute video. And by the time you do your simple solutions, that should put you at about 40-minute activity. So that's kind of my game plan. Some days I can hit that. Some days I can't. Some days are short. Just depends. So that's where we stop today, guys. See you in a minute. Bye.